Welcome back, everybody. It is the Working Brother back at you with another talk. Yet again, George WM3. He's stuck around. We've got another topic, so we decided to make it another talk. George, welcome back. How you doing? Great as always. Let me guess.
I'm doing fantastic today.
Today is fantastic. After half an hour only with the Working Brother. Good to hear. We got into some comedic topics. We even had some comedic clips, historical stuff playing last time. Now we're back to the standard format of white papers. Raven Geostrategic, George's new website, link in the description as always. Don't forget that this channel is demonetized and that you can support the Working Brother by buying me a coffee or checking out the Patreon. Now, on with the comedy. George, the 7 Ps. And the hatred of Donald Trump. What?
Yes. All right. Yeah, just real quick, because if you haven't watched the other 7P papers, this builds on the previous ones. Again, these aren't, none of these things are standalone. They're all sequential. So the 7Ps are the Professor P, Prosecutor P, Police, Politician, Press, Priest, and the Parent. We defined those in the previous one. So this one talks about the left was on the cusp of completing the entire 7P cultural institution takeover of North America. And they're about to do that. Had Hillary gotten elected, they would have gone ahead and completed it, but Donald Trump got elected. So yeah, I know Victor Davis Hanson, some other people out there were saying, "Oh well, people are just making up reasons why they hated Donald Trump so much." Well, the real reason is they were about to complete the 7Ps, and just as they're about to complete it, they're on I used a 2-yard line analogy. They think they're about to punch it in the end zone. If Hillary got elected, they would have had, let's just say she gets elected twice, 2 terms. Yeah, then the 8Ps are fully completed. I mean, the 7Ps are fully completed over the 8 years, I meant to say. So the hatred of Donald Trump comes to the fact that he came in without having a systematic understanding of the problem, certainly tried to reverse a whole bunch of different aspects of it without fully knowing what he was doing. So here it talks about what probably would have happened. Well, wait, not probably what would have happened, what they've been doing and what they would have continued doing to complete the 7P takeover of the United States. So here it is. I have it down to, I consolidated it down to about 10 different things. I renumbered them the other day, so I had to look. I kind of consolidate them and regrouped them, so I renumbered them. So yeah, the first one is they would have used the Department of Education to advance all progressive leftist gender and critical race theory courses in the blue urban areas and college towns in the red states in order to try to turn the red states into blue democratic states so they can achieve the single party socialist state that they want to achieve. So then they would have been granting more authority to the federal election committee to change the voting laws, basically to allow mail-in voting, ballot harvesting, not just in the blue states that already made it legal, but in the red states to make it legal so they can take their community organizers and go out and round up a whole bunch of votes for leftist politicians and get them elected, rather than people going to the voting booths and showing their IDs. They would go to the different neighborhoods, sign people up, and carry their ballots in, printed out and filled out correctly. That's what ballot harvesting is. So they would have changed the elections to make that legal in all 50 states rather than just the blue states. They would have, the They would have further funded the international non-governmental organizations, the NGOs, the leftist foundations and think tanks, to expedite mass migration of people from the developing world into the United States. They would have done that too. They're doing that for two reasons. If they go to the blue states, the census taken in the blue states increases. So then they get more electoral votes, and they get more congressmen appointed proportion to them for the U.S. Congress. Okay, the senators are fixed, but the House of Representatives, the Congress and the lower house, those are accorded towards state populations. So mass migration, it helps the House of Representatives, the Electoral College votes in the blue states. And if they move more illegal migrants into the red states, it can turn them blue also. So it's a if you change the federal election committee laws and you expedite mass migration, all of these programs work hand in hand. Okay, so then continue. Okay, for the police P, those things would be pertaining to the politician P's for changing the laws, and the police P and the prosecutor P's for either how they enforce the laws and what they don't enforce. So the prosecutors and the police are in law enforcement. So for the police and law and prosecutor P, they would continue to change the Customs and Border Patrol and the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services to facilitate mass migration to the United States, to import a new proletariat, to punish the blue-collar workers for not voting for the Democratic Party since the days of Ronald Reagan. There is a professor, Dinesh Gaska, at William Patterson University in northern New Jersey. She's been writing about that. She wrote some papers on why I left the left, and she talks about that in depth, that the leftist people and their different chat groups got very mad that the union blue-collar employees stopped voting Democrat. Okay, the major union leaders may still be Democrat supporters and give the union funding to Democrats, but the rank and file have been voting, they're men, and they're voting more, they've been voting Republican more and more ever since Ronald Reagan. So
George,
there's an element of...
I got to break up your white paper with some memes. You mentioned the left, and I couldn't help myself but pull up the Canadian therapy dog. When I showed you this before we started recording, you had a very good answer. Do you want to share with people?
Yeah, the welfare state programs, for the Social Security pensioner programs are so expensive. It's cheaper to do that, and for the decades, people were going to say it's going to come down to that, and they're like, oh no, it won't. They were going to say, well, the Republicans were going to cut back Social Security, and that was going to, roll Granny off the cliff. And instead, what did they do in the blue states? They put the COVID patients back in to the nursing homes, which killed a lot of them. And a lot of people think that wasn't by accident, because it was done in like all the blue states, and it was killing tens of thousands of the elderly. And people were like, wait a second, they just wiped out, like 100,000 elderly off of the pensioner rolls. Boy, isn't that too convenient? And then in Canada, they offered people, they made suicide legal. So they can't pay for the social services for the elderly like they promised they would. So they're doing that instead. And that's kind of like in India, they had they used to burn the women on the funeral pyre. And my sister was like, oh yeah, the women loved the husband so much. I'm like, no, they didn't want to support the old women financially. And my sister was like, oh, so it's the more things change, the more they stay the same. So when you break up the family unit and the children no longer take care of the parents, the government takes care of them a little bit differently.
Yeah, let's get back to your white paper. That joke went sour real fast.
Well,
anyway,
you use the words. These words can be used they have multiple meanings in English.
Yeah.
All right. So so when you talk about number 4 and it's changing the U.S. and Customs and Border Patrol, think about they're changing the prosecutor P, the judicial P, and the police P. When you read these things, correlate it to the P's that apply. I should actually put that in there since I said it. So they can use the politician P's and the law enforcement P's, prosecutor P's to accelerate mass migration. And then, then the blue states can start offering the illegals driver's licenses in the sanctuary cities and the sanctuary states. That makes it easier for them to vote with ballot harvesting, because then they just change the laws of you don't have to have an ID to vote, and you don't have to have proof of citizenship to vote. So again, they change the politician P's, change the laws, the prosecutor P's, and the police P's enforce the laws differently, and you get an outcome of illegals going through the residency processes very quickly, because they change the residency processes, give them driver's license, so then they can get a paper, or then they can get and then they can vote with the absentee mail-in ballots. Nobody checks the identity of the person or the citizenship of the person, then they're allowed to vote. So you can start really changing the laws. So these are all the things that they've done. These would have had Hillary had the White House, the Senate, and the House of Representatives, they would have pushed all this thing through. So, and they certainly would have pushed a lot of it through with only part of that.
So now we're at 7, if I'm not mistaken, yeah?
Yeah, no, I went through ballot harvesting, so let's go to 8. So then, I kind of mentioned it before. You have the whole U.S. Census, so if you can put more illegals into the blue states and do the ballot harvesting to get them to vote blue, they're also counted in the U.S. citizenship. So you get more congressmen in the House of Representatives, and you get more electoral votes based on those proportions. So you're changing a lot of different things. So the red states are being weakened by these policies, and it favors the blue states. So then they get power in the federal government. They can change the laws further to make it harder for the red states and gradually eliminate them. They only need to flip Texas and Florida, and there'll never be a Republican president again. So the big one is they would love to nominate enough Supreme Court justices to take over that, because then the Republicans have been controlling the Supreme Court and have been striking down a lot of these changes in the 7 Ps when they go up through the judicial appellate system. So if they could, if they had control of the Supreme Court, they would have nailed down all the 7 Ps, a decade ago or 2 decades ago. So yeah, they would love to have all of the 7. They would love to have the Supreme Court of the United States, because then they could use that as a super legislature to change whatever laws Congress made. You could just have the court system change it to something else. I had a whole semester of classes on that at one point in my life. So getting down to, go to number 9. I'm just going to read number 9 because number 9, people kind of don't make the connections.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very, very, very important because it changes the whole nature of the Constitution, of the United States Constitution. It's nominate and appoint more progressive attorneys to the federal court system and the Supreme Court to turn the Supreme Court into a super legislature to debilitate the first 10 amendments. The bill, which is the Bill of the Rights. The Bill of the Rights of the U.S. Constitution is based on God-given natural law and natural rights. The left wants to replace that legal doctrine with the doctrine of positive rights granted by the government. The problem is that if the government grants the rights and can revoke the rights at any time, then it is a privilege and not a right. Hence, there are no rights in a Marxist government. Rights only exist in a Christian-based government that recognize the distinction between eternal and temporal orders that lead to a separation of church and state. Leftist governments are based on atheism. If there is no church, then there is no separation between church and state or ideology and state because there's no church. The discussion of competing ideological and religious belief system is the Marxist form of blasphemy. Hence, there is no free speech in Marxist governments either. You see that with the extreme forms of censorship that we already have. Had Hillary won...
What censorship? This is a comedy show.
I mean, the amount of videos that happen to disappear. Yeah. You know, the people that, you know, some videos get funded and boosted in the algorithms. Some get demonetized and shadow banned.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. We'll have to do a video on that.
Let's do. Do you want to do 10? Do 10. Do 10.
Yeah, let's just finish it. It's the last one.
All right.
So 10, since people are confused about what socialism is, all it is the expansion regulatory power of the bureaucracies, and it perfect socialism would be taking 100% of everybody's income and then be redistributing the money equally. Okay, they can't quite do that, but what they can do is 10, expand the Internal Revenue Service to command confiscatory taxation to enhance the redistributive policies of the social justice warrior ethos and complete the Cloward and Piven plan. Everybody should look up and watch videos on the Cloward and Piven plan. It's a 1968. It refers to an article titled "The Weight of the Poor," written by Cloward and Piven. They were a husband and wife team at Columbia University in their sociology department. So they were of the Frankfurt School in the New Left, and they were urging they're trying to get their activists to go out and do community organizing to drive up the welfare rolls in the cities, to necessitate, if the budgets, if the government spending radically increases, then the government is going to have to radically increase the taxation to pay for it, and then you would have de facto socialism. So these are their strategies of how the Fabian socialist movement is based on strategies to move Christian democratic capitalist countries to social democratic countries. So Cloward and Piven is one of those Fabian socialist plans to do so. So yes, if you could expand the role of social services, there are Treasury Department special agents that are gun carriers. So again, it's another one of the police Ps that you're enhancing here. And yeah, they would have all done that under Hillary Clinton. Again, their donors, they would give them tax breaks to make them exempt from these laws. They're only going to punish those who don't get a tax exemption. So if you pay up on one side of the electoral beginning of the process, then you don't have to pay on the other. So this is very controlling the Internal Revenue Service is really essential to them. Dick Morris was explaining years ago that a lot of the left-leaning people go into the Internal Revenue Service because they want to make sure that the rich people pay their fair share. The problem is
20,000 IRS agents. Is that what it was?
No, it's 80,000.
80,000 now?
They hired 80,000 more.
All right, excellent.
There's more there's more Treasury agents than the UK has in their entire military, all 4 branches.
That's hilarious. It's true. They have 60,000. They have 60,000.
Oh,
the British, they do.
Yeah, the amount of Treasury agents in the United States dwarfs the entire UK military, all 4 branches.
Oh, that's gold. Comedy gold. Conclusion. The left is.
If you know exactly what their strategic plans are, you know exactly how to reverse it. So, yeah, you want to disseminate power out of the federal bureaucracies back to the states. But, yeah, if they moved to a flat tax and got rid of all the tax loopholes, then that would dry up a lot of the funding for the different the different leftist think tanks and NGOs that do the regime change destabilization operations overseas and do the mass migration effort into the United States. Of course, I've been down to the Darien Gap with Michael Yon and Sarah Ashton Cirillo. So we got to see how that works. And again, I drive down to the border here in Texas and see how it works down there. So yeah, if the Democratic voting base really does seem to be totally unaware of what's going on, the degree that this is occurring. Of course, they say Democrats tend to only watch Democrat news, where if you're a conservative, you get bombarded by Democrat news on mainstream media. We also have to go to alternative media for conservative news. So we end up watching both. But the Democrats only watch one, or they just go on YouTube for entertainment purposes, and they're not actually looking at alternative media people digging up stories that are occurring, but just not reported in mainstream media, but are prevalent. You don't have to look very hard to find them either, though. So, yeah. Oh, one thing that's worth noting here is the Democrat voting base seems to be unaware that they can either vote to allow mass migration or stop mass migration and have their pensions and their Medicare and Medicaid, but they can't have both. Right now, the Democratic voting base thinks that they can have both. But in reality, the United States is $35 trillion in debt. It started out at, I think Bush ended up with $10 trillion in debt at the end of his term in 2008. Then Obama doubled it to $20 trillion in debt from 2008 to 2016. And then since Trump, I think, left with another $10 trillion in debt. And since Trump, and that was in 4 years, not 8. And then in Biden's 4 years, it went from 35 or Trump was about 8 trillion in debt, and basically there's another 7.5 trillion added on with Biden in 3 years. We'll get charts, but this is close enough for conversation. We're up to 35 trillion. About 10 years ago, I've been saying, because of the interest payments increasing as the debt goes up, the the United States was going to start experiencing inflation at 30 trillion in national debt, higher levels of inflation at 35 trillion. And then as we approach 40 trillion, it should be a financial collapse. It should be a Weimar Republic or a Venezuela type of scenario.
Are you trying to segue to that comment from a couple of videos ago?
Oh yeah, the guy that said I had no idea what he was talking about. Now we'll do that another time.
All right. I have it queued. If you wanna like cover it now in passing, because it is the same topic with the debt ceiling.
Oh, we can, but we gotta. I mean, I need to get a whole bunch of these the different aspects of the 7P plan set up, and then there's how did they change the university system to do this in the first place? So that's going to be in the next stack. It's going to be how they took how the Frankfurt School started instituting the critical theory, critical race theory, critical gender theory, all that, and then used repressive tolerance to shout down conservatives. And then they took all the conservative thought out of the university system. Well, what they did was, if you're taking out the Hume-Smith free market theories on the foundational political economic order, again, we went through that. We went through the book thumbnails, 2 months ago now, or almost 2 months ago. We'll go through those again. Like so they took out the competing Montesquieu Hume-Smith series of books that say government has too much collateral damage, limit it, don't accelerate it. And then the Rousseau, Marx, Engels is, no, we need to make good government. Well, the problem with Rousseau, Marx, and Engels, once leftist leaders get into power, they're absolutely nothing like what Marx and Engels predicted. And then that's a whole different conversation. I have very, very, very lengthy papers that I wrote close to 2 decades now that we need to go over on that. So it's too much of a topic to get into right now. But yeah, I need to start laying out the chart. When we get into those other papers, you start to talk about the amount of interest on our debt now is way higher than our entire Pentagon spending and intelligence services spending. So at some point, the far left doesn't want a social services cut. The neoconservatives don't want the military and intelligence areas cut. And the neoliberals want nothing cut because they want more of everything. So that's our 3 ruling coalition people. So if those 3 ruling coalitions refuse to cut anywhere, then we're headed into financial bankruptcy. If Trump comes in and starts to cut, well, then all 3 of those groups are going to be really against him, which you have all this, okay, you have the politicians trying to impeach Trump in the Congress and the Senate. You have the police and the prosecutor P's making all this bogus lawfare against him and his supporters, so people can see how the different P's are thrown into place to try to achieve the rest of the P's, so they can do the transformation of America that President Obama promised. So the reason why we're going over this is Obama kept on throwing out transformation of America without ever defining it. Well, it's defined in the history of leftist thought, and I'm explaining that in the 7P program, which is what we're doing here. But yes, the debt and the welfare state is going up. If people out there should look on YouTube, Derrida's Wither Marxism Conference at UC Riverside, I believe it was in 1994. The more that you read about that and read Derrida's books, Wither Marxism, on the state of Marxism and the debt, he's got He's got 10. He's got 10 major problems with the West. He doesn't know how they connect. He thinks the socialist government solves them rather than accelerates them. When you get into my unified behavioral theory, the macro models, then it becomes really super clear when you're looking at the those three behavioral frameworks of Aristotle's 6 forms of government, per capita GNP function of economic growth theories over population growth rates of change, and how that equals to first and second world more developed countries. They have higher economic growth, lower population growth, so they have a tighter wage labor market. And then the third and fourth world failed states are the opposite. They have lower economic growth rates and higher population growth rates. So they have a loose and a catastrophically loose wage labor rate scale. So when you look at the fact that if you go to socialism, then you're changing to a slower economic growth rate pattern, but that usually speeds up the population growth when you do that, because you're with more welfare as expenditures. You're if you're paying people to have more children, they have more children. If that's, whenever you subsidize something, it means you want more of it. So then once people realize that your form of government of Aristotle correlates directly to your economic growth, population growth proportions, it's not the government that you, quote, want. It's the tight versus catastrophically loose wage labor rate that determines which government form you get and which geopolitical form you get. So that wage labor proportion rate dictates the other two forms. And we have a lot of stuff to get into, but basically why the 7P plan, if it was completed, would be so absolutely disastrous is they would move the denominator and the numerators, the numerator and the denominators, both in the wrong direction, where it would go into a catastrophic loose wage labor rate, and that's when everything collapses. So I'm correlating those frameworks to a $40 trillion debt limit, that as we approach that, the interest payments on the debt will be so high, they can't pay for the military or the social services. So at some point, the left, the neoliberals, and the neoconservative coalition falls apart. But the problem with that is the whole United States will experience a very rapid decline of some sort. Now, you don't know. Does the economy collapse 10%? Does it collapse 20%? Does it collapse 30%? We don't know. You can just look at other, Weimar Republic type of scenarios, or the Argentina and Chile examples of how much the economy dropped because of leftist programs in the past, and start to get some kind of estimation, that it drops 15 to 20% or something. That throws us into another Great Depression territory. But then if the United States experiences that, what does the world experience? So, yeah, that's why this takes a lot of videos to do.
I was going to interrupt you like 7 times, George, but I bit my tongue every single time. The audience members will miss the old days when I used to interrupt you more frequently. I'm going to have to take a break from your white paper and teach you some Romanian. I came across this today.
Fuck you. Fuck you.
Actually, it's all right, because translated, fuck yo actually means, I'll do it. No. Fuck yo.
Fuck you.
Fuck yo.
Fuck
you. Somebody sent me that today. I couldn't help but include it in the recording.
Well, I only went to Romania once.
Yeah?
No.
I've never been to Romania. I've never been to Romania.
You've never been to Romania?
Nope.
I
would like to go.
You're only 2 countries away.
Not even. They're they border us.
Oh, you can go the other way too. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you can go through Bulgaria or through Hungary. Right. But
they border us as well. Pretty sure.
Oh, do they? I
I'm pretty sure. Like now
I
you're
don't live
making me
on-
question myself. Now you're making
I
me
don't
question
live on-
myself, George. This is you're making me question reality.
Oh
Did I
yeah,
find the
yeah,
map?
yeah, yeah. I didn't. Yeah.
Like,
I always.
okay. I thought
Yeah,
I was not that bad at geography. I was pretty sure it'd be
I
border Romania.
apparently I'm bad. No, because
All
I
right.
go up. I always
You're
go up through
American. It's in your
Turkey.
blood.
I always go up through Turkey, and then I either go into Romania, and then go into, where Ukraine, wherever I'm going, or I go
Yeah,
through
that's
Serbia
the
or
NATO route.
Macedonia.
That's
Yeah,
the
I don't
NATO route.
really. Yeah. Well, I do. Yeah, exactly.
George, you've got a world population chart here. Why is this at the end of this
Oh.
paper?
Okay, well, just so people understand where the analytics are coming from, okay, they say that hominids, go down to the bottom one first. I guess I should have put them in this order. I like to explain it in this order. Because with my Aristotle 6 forms of government, per capita GNP function, and the 4-category geopolitical form model, what I'm tracking is 2 trends of technology growth and population growth over time, which is what this chart tracks. So they say that hominids have been on Earth for about 150,000 years. So it took about 150,000 years to attain 1 billion people on the planet. And that was in 1804. So from 1804, we had 1 billion people on the planet. And 200 years later, we have about 8 billion people on the planet. So we have a logarithmic growth. Okay, yeah, leave it on that one now. All right, so now this one, the blue on the bottom, is the Northern Hemisphere first and second world countries. So their population growth has been relatively flat over the past 100 some odd years. But if you look at, well, that's a projection from 1950 to 2050. So anyway, if you look at the developing world, all the population growth is in the developing world. So you're talking about Latin America, Africa, and Southern Asia. Southern Asia is probably, or just Asia is probably the biggest one, because you're talking about India, Southeast Asia, and China. China's population is leveled off because of the one child per family problem, or program, I should say. So you're really talking about India, who now has a population higher than China's, I think, and Southeast Asia, because the population's increased in Burma, Bangladesh. It's a Muslim country, so they really boosted their population there, and somewhat in Myanmar and in Thailand. Cambodia has recovered from the Khmer Rouge days, and Vietnam, I think, is replenished but holding. So yeah, really, you're talking about Latin America, Africa, especially the Islamic parts of Africa, and the Islamic parts of Western Asia is what you're really talking, and India is what you're really talking about with the growth there. So all the growth is really occurring. So if you really want global development, you want to stop people's population growth from occurring in the third world, and you want to really kind of bump it up in the northern hemisphere. But the left is trying to flood the north with migrants that are from fourth world failed states. And as we can see in the UK, all that really leads to is just the creation of another fourth world failed state.
I think I saw some news recently in Canada that they're like planning to like bring in 30 million immigrants within the next 10 years or something like that, like some time frame and some huge impossible number, which was just like shocking.
Yeah,
Like,
well, they want to
new
double
news.
their population with third world migration into a country that that's very cold, and it's got a very short growing season. I mean, I used to live in New York State, so I'd go to Canada a lot. It's just so totally not going to work there. You're bringing people from climates where it's 80 degrees all year round or more, and you're going to put them into Canada. I mean, it's just not going to work on so many different levels. But yeah, click down to the population growth chart on the bottom, because people need to know where the UN 2030 agenda is coming from, and it's because the developing world's population is growing logarithmically. That's where that's coming from. Just the whole mass migration. Yeah, if they're
Sure, George, that's where it's coming from. It's not coming from Satan and from like the misogynist agenda. Not at all. It has nothing to do with them wanting you to eat bugs and be happy about it.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. In Thailand, I didn't realize this, but yes, they do eat bugs, and yes, they are happy about it. I don't think I can get into that. Well, okay, I've been offered bugs. They actually sell bugs on the carts, and the locals really love them because I guess they've been doing that for thousands of years.
A friend of mine a long time ago went to Guangzhou in China, and he told me he stayed at a 5-star hotel where the buffet was insects and stuff. So, yeah, whatever floats your boat, but no thanks. Like, I'd rather stick to my protein being in meat.
Yeah, I never the locals offer it to me. I have not accepted so far. And I certainly don't want to accept it on a daily basis. It's not my plan.
I want to break the monotony of this 7P talk, and I want to ask you about another P, pipelines, and that thing with the Kursk intrusion and that pumping station. It says here that Ukraine and Russia plan to keep gas flowing amid the fighting in the Suja gas receiving station. How do you feel about that, George? Is it surprising?
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised at that whole Kursk, intrusion, because logistically they can't sustain it. There was somebody that had a sarcastic meme talking about, oh yeah, they're going to take the couple thousand people involved into that, and their handful of armored vehicles are going to go straight to Moscow. I mean, they're getting themselves into a situation that you can't get yourself out of. So in other words, they're going to end up being encircled and killed or taken prisoner or something. So I don't really fully understand what the logic of that is. Okay, the logic is obviously not military. It's more, they're trying to capture something.
Media.
Yeah, some kind of political charade is. But I mean, you're going to kill a few thousand people for a political charade, and they don't care. They logistically they can't sustain it. So yeah, I don't know where they're going with that. The other video bloggers, look at that extensively and analyze it. I don't really get it, but I was wondering, are they doing that so they can cut the gas off, but then they can cut the gas off from the Ukrainian side of the border without killing anybody? So are they gonna, if they're gonna sabotage it, they don't need 2,000 people to blow it up. Just send one person in alone to blow it up that can then disappear into the hinterlands. Why send 2,000?
Or a missile.
Or send a missile. Or send a missile and try to blow it up. I don't really get that. I don't really get what they're doing over there, and I haven't had time to look it up. I just glanced at the headlines.
Mm-hmm.
It's all I had time to do because I'm trying to do the other stuff. And so I have no idea what they're doing with that.
You want to get into that comment or save that for another one?
Oh, we can save it. It's not going away. I mean, the debt's just going. The debt of the United States, Canada, UK, the whole Five Eyes countries is doing nothing but escalating. In Germany, they're deindustrializing because of these left-wing programs, because they did achieve most of the 7 Ps. So it's not time critical at all. I have more time critical stuff to do. And then we're going to have to just set up. Well, I mean, we're going to cover the topic anyway. So it doesn't matter. We'll do it later.
Got it. Is there anything else you'd like to mention before we call this a talk?
No.
Excellent. George, thank you for sticking around. Everybody who stuck around to the end, thank you very much. Ili na srpskom, thank you, veliku mačku. See you again soon. Peace out, everyone.